Welcome to the Iranian Republic. Today we have a special guest, Slavin. Barbara, it's great to have you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me back.
So after all the events that have happened in the past months and past couple of weeks, we thought it would be timely to get together and reassess what has happened and have more of a forward-looking conversation and think about what are possible scenarios that can take place in the coming months and the coming weeks and in the coming years potentially. I would like to ask you start by this question first. Do you think the entirety of the negotiations between Trump's administration and the Islamic Republic was all a ruse to fool Iranians, think that, oh, there's not going to be a military action against Iran's nuclear facilities, and then catch them by surprise? Or it was started in good faith by Donald Trump's administration. They're hoping they can avoid it. And as New York Times reported at the end, when the negotiations were not moving as fast as people expected, Netanyahu comes in and says, hey, I had this plan from before. Why don't I implement my plan? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of both. I think that the administration did want a deal. It initially put forward a very realistic proposal, and then something shifted. And I'm still not clear exactly what it was, whether there were people who told Trump that what he was proposing was too much like the JCPOA. But you saw a very dramatic turn in Steve Witkoff's rhetoric and demands, sort of after a couple of fairly positive meetings. And then it became clear that they were going to get bogged down over the issue of enrichment. And as many people have written, as I've written for Stimson, enrichment, this has been, at least the principle of enrichment has been very important for Iran throughout the history of nuclear negotiations. And they might have been willing to agree to some formula in which they would not exercise that right for a while, but in the end, they would not renounce what they consider to be a right under the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty. And so then we began to see some concerns mounting, and then Bibi swoops in and says, let's bomb them. And Trump gives him the green light. And then there is deception because the strikes occur just before a scheduled meeting of negotiators. So a little bit of takia, if you will, thrown into the mix, and Iranians are caught flat-footed. Officials are murdered in their beds, and we have this bizarre 12-day war, which the U.S. joins at the tail end and then announces is over, and mission accomplished. And we can talk about whether mission was accomplished, if you like.
Absolutely, yeah. That was my next question. Was mission accomplished, like just delaying enrichment for a few months or a few years? Is it mission accomplished? And what would be the so-called end game in here? What's the end goal? Is it to just mow the lawn as the problem's going to grow? As if Iran starts enriching uranium again, they're going to come and bomb Iran again? What are your thoughts on that? What do you think is going to be the?
I hate that expression, mow the lawn. 1,000 people died in Iran. 28 people, I think, were killed in Israel in the Iranian response. I mean, so this euphemism should be retired, I think. It was
in terms of like
killed people, as well as setting back the Iranian nuclear program. But yeah, I think that's the strategy going forward. I think unless Iran suddenly decides to capitulate on the issue of enrichment, and I mean, that could happen. We have seen cases in the past where Iran has made sudden concessions. And there are a lot of domestic developments going on that are putting the regime under tremendous pressure. But unless Iran is willing to come forward with a deal in which it says we won't enrich for X amount of time, and but we want some sort of technical promise that at some future time, perhaps. I mean, I can still see that if there are clever enough people, but my sense is that Trump has lost interest in Iran, and he's moving on to other things. He's busy with his trade deals, his tariffs, punishing universities, extorting television networks. He has a very long agenda of creating pain for a number of American institutions. And Iran is, parked now because whether he believes that he obliterated the program or not, he does think that he has solved the issue, at least for the foreseeable future. So without some new initiative from the Iranians or from, say, the Saudis or others, I think he's just going to park it and focus on other issues, and say that he's taken care of the Iran issue.
So as long as he's president for the next couple of years, he feels like problem solved for now. I don't need to think about it. I need to focus on other things. And
unless there is some new development on the Iranian side, and here, Iran still has, what is it, 900 tons, is it, of highly enriched uranium. It's got a lot of centrifuges. It's by no means done with the nuclear issue. The question is it in a position to actually try to make a bomb? Because that is the other option out there. I'm not a technical expert. I think it would be very difficult for Iran to do that. And given the other pressures on Iran, I mentioned the domestic pressures, I think Iran needs to get its domestic house in order. It's not enough just to execute people on death row and, and use fiery rhetoric. I mean, there needs to be a reform movement that's revived within Iran to try to build on one aspect of the war, which was a kind of patriotism, nationalism, whatever you want to call it, that emerged from Iranian society writ large in reaction to the Israeli strikes. If the regime is smart, it will do more than, put up posters of Arash the Archer in Tehran and play Iranian national music instead of Islamic music on Ashura. It can do these things. It can begin to actually lift some of the more oppressive measures that are affecting Iranians. When you look at the economic crisis, the blackouts, the power cuts, the water shortages that people are experiencing this summer, I mean, these are emergencies that Iran has to deal with domestically before it does anything really on the international front. So I'm kind of looking inside Iran to see what will happen there, what opportunities are there, what the regime will do. Can it pivot? Is it impossible? This is what I think we really need to see. And then the nuclear question perhaps later. The other thing, I mean, Iran on the foreign policy front, I mean, maybe not now, but at some point, it needs to bury death with America and death to Israel. It needs to adopt a foreign policy that is more reflective of the regional consensus on issues like Palestine. Iran has already tried to be more Palestinian than the Palestinians, and it has brought death, destruction to Palestinians, and it has brought economic ruin to Iran. So there needs to be, just a reformulation of so many things in Iran. And there are serious people who are thinking about this. A lot of them are in jail, but not all. So, let's see what happens in the next few months with the remnants of the reformist camp. Let's see what happens with civil society. I think there could be some interesting developments there.
Interesting. And what do you think on the nuclear issue? So what Iran can do, or you think they will do, in terms of, like, we have seen some negotiations with the Europeans. What's going on is Iran is not exiting the NPT, but at the same time, they mentioned we're gonna talk to IAEA inspectors. What's the game plan for Iran from your perspective?
Yeah, well, they want to prevent so-called snapback of UN sanctions. And that's why they met with the Europeans, because Britain and France are on the UN Security Council and are party to the JCPOA, and they could snap back the sanctions if they decide, and no one could veto it. So I think there may be a deal emerging where they will restore some limited cooperation with the IAEA in return for postponing snapback, changing the deadline for it, which my understanding is that is possible. And that would certainly be in Iranian national interest, because if snapback happens, we've seen so many statements from Iranian officials that they will then leave the NPT. And if they don't, it would be yet another enormous loss of face for the Islamic Republic not to carry through on this threat. So perhaps there is some way that they can manage this after they do their own damage assessment, which they are currently doing at the nuclear facilities. And we've seen reports that I believe it's Isfahan, the deeply underground chambers at Isfahan are still intact.
Correct.
And the damage, so we need to get, the Iranians need to give their damage assessment on top of what we've seen from American and Israeli intelligence agencies about the extent of what actually occurred.
What do you think are the options for the Islamic Republic? Is it what happens if they exit the NPT? What happens if they stay? What are the options?
Yeah, they're not good. I mean, none of them are good. If they exit the NPT, there will be more sanctions, more pressure, if that's possible. They will enter sort of North Korea pariah status, total pariah status. And for what? I mean, the North Koreans had managed to hide a lot of their infrastructure, and they were able to rush and make a nuclear bomb because they had other deterrents against attack, namely a huge conventional arsenal, which could have destroyed the South Korean capital of Seoul. Iran doesn't have that leverage anymore. Hezbollah is very weak. Much of their conventional arsenal has been destroyed, their missile defenses and so on, destroyed by the Israelis. So, if they start to try to make a bomb and then they're caught, which is entirely likely given penetration of the system by Israeli intelligence, they're just going to get attacked again, and the economic isolation, as I said, will be even worse. So their options are not good. That's why I say they really need to get their domestic house in order. They have to find some way to get more popular support, or else they can't do what North Korea did. They also don't have the totalitarian control over their population that North Korea has over its people. Iran has never been a totalitarian state. It's authoritarian, it's repressive, but people have always expressed their views, and obviously will continue to do that. So that's my advice. Don't quit the NPT. Find some way back into cooperation with the IAEA, and institute really important political reforms that will begin to shore up your country against all this pressure, and then start to deal with useless rhetoric, the death to all of that, and get on board with the international consensus about the Middle East, which may not be terribly strong, but it's sort of the best that we have right now, that Israel has to end the war, the hostages have to be freed, people have to be fed, and there has to be a new government for Gaza that can be recognized by the international community on the way to some sort of Palestinian entity. That's the international consensus. There's no reason that Iran should continue to insist on the impossible.
And I wanted to get to that other option, staying in NPT, having negotiations with the Europeans, and we have heard from some European countries that Iran should also abandon its missile program, but let's say that's not even on the table. And I don't think Islamic Republic in any way or shape or form is going to give that program up. But let's say Iran agrees on some sort of a nuclear deal. What is the path forward from there? Are Europeans or Americans, for that matter, are okay with Iran enriching at 1% have at least have some ability to enrich uranium. But because it doesn't seem like, because if they were, they probably would have reached an agreement and the war wouldn't have happened.
You know, as I said earlier, I don't think the Trump administration is going to allow it. That's very clear. That's why Trump gave Bibi the okay to bomb Iran. That's why the U.S. bombed Iran, because they're not willing to accept any uranium enrichment. The most Iran can probably get is a theoretical recognition of a right to enrich that Iran will not use in order to get the settlement. But that's quite clear.
I wanted to ask a hypothetical question. So let's say Iran was like any other country, a democratic country, free republic. Would it get the ability to enrich uranium? Would it have all of these issues if they didn't have this rhetoric of death to America, death to Israel? Would Iran be able to do that easily, right?
Yeah, that's such a hard question to answer. I mean, given the history, you know, I think there's going to be distrust of Iran for a very long time to come. No, I think that the U.S. would try to negotiate the kind of agreements that it's negotiated with the United Arab Emirates and with Bahrain, whereby the U.S. would supply nuclear technology and fuel, and Iran would not have indigenous enrichment. I mean, even with Saudi Arabia, the U.S. has not agreed to that yet. So there are very few countries where the U.S. You know, permits or does not object to enrichment, and it's primarily European countries that have promised not to develop nuclear weapons or that are already nuclear states under the NPT.
Gotcha. That was a very good recap of that, and I wanted to get to the internal issues, internal aspects of things. We've seen the letter from Mousavi. We've seen more than 1,000 people signing it. We've seen a lot of development inside Iran. I wanted to get your thoughts on, first, you think Khamenei got the wake-up call that all of his assumptions and calculations were wrong and he is vulnerable, and he put not just Islamic Republic but the entirety of Iran in jeopardy? And is he going to change his ways and methods in which he has been governing for so many years?
Look, I hope so. I mean, if this wasn't a wake-up call, I don't know what is. I mean, he lost what? 24 top military officials, nuclear scientists.
But the rhetoric we see on like national TV, and they say we won the war, and I'm not sure how much they believe their own propaganda. But I want to know your thoughts. Have you seen any indications of Khamenei?
You know, you just the kind of leeway, and we have actually a piece going up on the Stimson Center website in a day or so. The leeway that's been given to the propaganda apparatus to use Persian memes and you know, music, characters from the Shahnameh, you know, that the willingness to tap this Persian Iranian nationalism and not Islam, you know, that we've seen over the last few weeks since the war, I think was very telling. That he understood that, you know, the same old propaganda was not going to work. The question is this just a temporary phase, or is this longer lasting?
Because in his latest speech, Khamenei in his latest speech went back to the old Iran. Yeah.
Well, that indicates that it was just temporary, you know, and that he doesn't know any other way to govern, which is unfortunate. But he is old, and he won't be there much longer. And, you know, there are questions about whether he's really even in charge anymore. You know, I think there's more of a collective leadership than ever. There was some interesting comments by Ali Akbar Veliati on the need for change. And he's, of course, a longtime advisor to Supreme Leader, former foreign minister. So I think there are things bubbling under the surface that may come out. I hope he lets political prisoners out and lifts the house arrest for the old reformists. It's long past time to do that. You know,
speaking of Velati, I'm actually not sure about like if he has written that or well with his permission, because if you remember his Parkinson issue, that he could barely walk and properly. But yeah, I haven't.
I'm not sure about that, but I've not seen any indication that he's so incapacitated that he, you know, somebody would put words in his mouth anyway. But
that could be a positive signal, you think?
I thought it was a very positive signal. I mean, I can dig out the story. As I say, it'll be on the Stimson Center website, Middle East Perspectives, in a day or so. But it's a very thoughtful look at the ways in which the regime is trying to placate popular opinion and certainly reduce its unpopularity anyway, you know, to some extent. And there's so many crises, you know, the power shortages, the water shortages, that they're literally putting out fires everywhere now in Iran. And also my indications, you know, they're not enforcing the hijab, you know, this stuff you know, they say they will and then they don't. I mean, I think they understand they've lost that battle. How many more battles will they lose before they understand that they have to change?
And I wanted to get to an important topic that's been in my mind and in other people's mind as well, is that let's say Musavi or someone else, some political faction, political power in Iran, using nonviolent protests, they are able to change the government, let's say today. Now, what would be the reaction of different foreign countries, international powers to such change? Would they welcome that? Starting from like Israel, Saudi Arabia, regional powers, and going beyond to Europe and United States?
Yeah, I don't know about Israel. I mean, it would depend, I think, on the rhetoric on the nuclear issue and also on the so-called axis of resistance. You know, if a new Iranian government comes in and says, not only are we not going to develop nuclear weapons, but we're not going to try to reconstitute our enrichment program. We will no longer support Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. We will focus on our own problems and on Iran. We will seek cooperative relations with our neighbors, particularly the Arabs. We will not recognize Israel, but we will not try to destroy Israel. I think that would be welcomed universally, and I think it would ease a lot of tensions in the region. And you know, one thing we know about Trump is that he's willing to make rather dramatic shifts. Look at the way in which he announced that we would ease sanctions on Syria after, you know, speaking with the Saudis and one quick meeting with the new leader of Syria. Trump is capable of doing quite dramatic things and that kind of shock his base and annoy the Israelis from time to time. But we have to see this realistic platform come out of Iran. And, you know, it has to be indigenous. It can't be imposed from outside. And the diaspora, with all due respect, does not have the answer to Iran's problems. Iranians still living there have the answers to Iran's problems.
Exactly. And in Islamic Republic, we always, not Islam, in Iranian Republic, we always support the idea that change must come from inside, and all we can do as diaspora is to support and be their voice. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And are there any final thoughts and final comments that you would like to share with our viewers?
No, except that, you know, I spent 20 years of my life trying to prevent the U.S. from bombing Iran, and then the U.S. bombed Iran. So
but I feel like it wasn't as extensive as everybody thought.
Yeah,
it wasn't
I mean,
a 3-week plan of CENTCOM.
It was, you know, obviously not as bad for me as it was for Iranians, and particularly those with relatives in the country. But I have lots of friends there, and you know, those 12 days were a nightmare. I barely slept, and the only thing, I mean, you know, we still see various attacks here and there in Iran. There's obviously sabotage still going on. But if the U.S. had to do this, thank God they did it and stopped as quickly as they did. And I hope we never do it again. I still think that, you know, military action is not the answer. But, you know, if we look back in a couple of years and there is a new Iran, there's an Iranian republic, I'll be the first to admit that maybe this was a turning point. Right now, I'm frankly not sure. I still am quite skeptical of that, but for the sake of all Iranians, I hope this will be a turning point for them.
Likewise, absolutely. Hoping to see that day where Iran is free and we have a real Republican democracy in Iran.
And we can all go back and visit and enjoy this beautiful country. Yeah, that's what I wish.
100%. Yeah, same.